Whenever someone asks me about my craziest explore, this is the first one that comes to mind, for several reasons that I'll get into during this video. But first, a disclaimer. These events occurred in 2012, way past the 12-month statute of limitations, so please don't prosecute me. Thanks. Also, these photos aren't really up to my 2021 standards, so my apologies in advance. This location hit my radar after a photographer I followed on social media posted portraits taken outside of a gorgeous wooden barn, with the date 1906 on it. I inquired and was told it was on the edge of a local industrial park. With some sleuthing, I was able to track it down to the Rim Park area in Waterloo. Like most farmhouses, this one was remarkably undocumented in any sort of online records, so any history it had has been lost to time. What made researching the property even more difficult was the place didn't even have a real address. The driveway was literally a city-owned sports field complex. Sometimes properties will be purchased and built upon in stages, so I assumed the city owned the lot and wasn't really expecting very much. Further research found that the farmhouse had been posted on an abandoned Ontario website just 2 months previous. However, only exterior photos were posted. My first trip was unsuccessful. The property was very well secured. Upon my second visit, however, the storm cellar door had been ripped clean off the hinges. I quickly jumped on the opportunity to get interior photos. However, I was entirely caught off guard by what I saw inside. The basement had a collection of various items, bikes, paint cans, etc. I figured it was probably just a scrap metal collection, nothing that unusual. But upstairs is where things started to get weird. At the top of the stairs was the kitchen, or what was once the kitchen, but it was now filled with stacked furniture. Dressers, cabinets, tables, etc. Mind you, the main floor was completely boarded up, so it was pitch black inside, and I could only see what my phone flashlight could illuminate. It was easy to get overwhelmed and miss things. From one room to the next, piles upon piles of furniture and random junk strewn about. A selection of antiques could even be found scattered within the mess. The weirdest part is that it all looked very intentional. The way things were arranged looked more like someone was using the home as storage rather than it being furniture left over from the previous homeowners. Construction materials were lined up and organized like they were to be reused. The second floor was completely empty, sans a few exceptions, including this creepy pitchfork shoved into the ceiling of a bedroom. By this time it was getting dark, so I left. I returned sometime later with another friend of mine, thinking I'd seen everything the house had to offer on my last trip. But when we entered the kitchen, a door was found behind some of the stacked furniture. It led to an entirely separate apartment that looked a lot more like your typical abandoned home. We returned to the main house and proceeded up the stairs. I don't believe in ghosts, period. Never have, likely never will, but when I showed my friend the pitchfork and how creepy I thought it was, she laughed and removed it from the ceiling. I kid you not when I say, the second that pitchfork came out of the plaster, the door to the porch slammed shut behind us. We both jumped. Coincidence? Maybe, but I made her put it back, just in case. We then proceeded to the barn, which I'd previously not explored, and holy sh*, easily hundreds of dollars in scrap metal heaped into piles on the bottom floor of the barn. Navigating around the mess, we found our way to the staircase. Our jaws dropped, and the tension rose dramatically when we walked up the staircase to the open portion of the barn. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of construction materials, organized into piles, dispersed throughout multiple levels. Everything you could possibly think of, from fireplace mantles to solid wood doors, stained glass windows, cast iron stoves, and a handful of clawfoot tubs. The coolest find was an antique sled. Again, it was easy to get lost, and I probably missed so much of what was in there. The lighting wasn't ideal either, so the photos aren't super clear, but I hope you can still get an idea of just how packed this place was. Before leaving, we checked out the drive shed, and it didn't disappoint either. Right at the door was a BMW motorcycle in good condition, a pile of scrap metal buried in an old Datsun truck, and there was a 1970s Peugeot 504. A couple years later, that same friend I took on my second trip sent me a Kijiji ad for old construction materials. The location listed was the abandoned house we had explored. She attended the sale and learned that the property was actually owned by a local demolition company, and they had been using it as storage for their nearby reclaimed materials store. Oopsie. The Kijiji sale was their attempt to empty the property of valuables before it was sold to the Hospice of Waterloo around 2016. The 5-acre property was set to be redeveloped into a palliative care facility. The farmhouse, sheds, and barn were torn down. The silo appears to have been saved and repurposed as part of the new building, but I'm not sure. Plans for the complex were approved in 2018 and construction began shortly after. The $20 million construction project took several years. The grand opening has been postponed several times, lately due to COVID. The facility is still not in operation as of April 2021.